Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Terrain Studio. I'm your host, Sean Morris. Just getting things going here on the Terrain Studio. I was just a little bit late because I was helping my daughter in the bath. So she's all finished. I'm all ready. And hopefully we can get everything rolling this evening. If you hear her crying in the background, that is because it is bedtime and nobody likes that. So tonight we're actually going to be working in the studio here. I'm going to be working on mostly doing some paper mache and things like that. We're going to be working on getting this covered here. So that's going to be going on during this this episode. And we're also going to be working on covering the landing platforms. I may actually start with the landing platforms just because I want to finish those first. If we get to this structure, great. If we don't, that's fine too. And I'll also show you guys the progress that I've made on the building. If you're tuning in on Facebook, which is perfectly fine, I believe you'll need to log into YouTube in order to do the comments. However, if you have a question, you can always fire it into the comments and I can have a look at it later and hopefully respond to you in turn. If I see it there, I will, of course, respond. And if you want to be able to interact with these, certainly just go into YouTube. You can subscribe to the channel. You can jump on. I don't even think you need to subscribe. I think you can just jump into the video on YouTube. The link is provided. You're probably seeing it via the link, and then we can get chatting that way. So I'm just going to adjust my face cam here a little bit. I was doing some meetings today and had to make a slight adjustment. There we go. And I'm also going to try to monitor Facebook as much as I can, although I won't be able to see comments. Like I said, they'll just be popping up on the screen. I'll have the screen on behind me. Let me turn that on. And I just replicate it there so I can see you guys. Let me just cycle through that. Input, input, input. And one more. Golden. Fantastic. All right, now I can see you guys there. So, as I said, any questions, pop them up and I can show you some things. We are working on the Kashyyyk projects. If you're not familiar with that, you can go back and watch several other of the live streams. This will be the second to last live stream for this one. After this, it's going to jump back over to Patreon. I'll talk about that later. Just winding down a month of free videos for you guys. This is what the table cam setup's going to look like this evening. If there's any issues there or you can't see anything, just let me know. I will adjust the camera as need be. So overhead cam is basically, like I said, just showing you that. You'll be hearing me in the distance just in case you're wondering why that changed. I just have a microphone set to one at the computer and then one far away. I just wanted to do a camera check there for you. So I'm going to jump over to the table and we'll get started with the session for this evening. So hope to see you there. Okay, so hopefully that's translating well enough for you guys. You guys should be picking me up on the second microphone now. I always get a little bit fooled by the viewer count. I forget that I cannot see Facebook. So hopefully it seems to be a little bit choppy on my end here. That doesn't seem right. So we'll just make a slight adjustment on that. We don't want to see me in slow motion. That won't translate well. Let me just change the setting on that and see. The computer is going to want to cooperate with us here. Overhead cam is good. This other one is definitely a little bit on the laggy side. We're going to just see if we can just make an adjustment there. It's kind of weird. Usually doesn't give me any trouble, but of course, why wouldn't it? We're live. That's a little bit strange. Just give me one sec, folks. I'm just going to make a slight adjustment on this. I'm going to see if we can't reboot this camera. Because I'm not going to have the... Yeah, I think we're good there. So we can definitely... Yeah, we're fine. All right. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be working on covering over some of these platforms. I just have the tape on there that was actually holding down the plastic card that we did some glue work on before. We're going to cover the entirety of these. They're actually going to get a little bit of a plastic veneer over the top later on to add some details. We'll do some paint details. And then we'll also add a few extra accoutrements. As I said, if you hear a baby crying, you'll have to just bear with her as she finds her her sleepy time. There we go. Okay, so I'm just pulling this tape off here just because I don't need it underneath the cardboard, or underneath the butcher paper rather. And then we'll get going. I'll just kind of show you how to make the mixture. It's not a scientific formulation by any means, but it is just a combination of water and weld bond, and then we will come in and give it multiple layers of the paper mache. It ends up being twofold. One, it's structural, just makes it a little bit more resilient for gameplay, and then two, it also doubles as the look and the pattern that we're going for on the build itself. So just finish pulling this off. I'm also going to grab the hut as well. I'll show you where I got onto that, and I may do a little bit more painting on that this evening. Usually I log about a couple hours on here with you guys, so depending on how the work goes. Got quite a bit of paper mache work to do, but I don't mind switching gears to work on some other things as well. Let me just grab that hut. Which is actually right here beside me. So this is what we've been working on the last few days, or last few sessions. I'm just going to turn a couple lights on, just because it'd be a lot easier for you guys to see. There we go. I think you guys can see a little bit better with that. Yeah, there we go. So we've been working on the hut. You'll notice that I have now laid down all the colors. So I definitely didn't have the color laid on in the last session. In fact, I was speculating around how I was going to lay the colors down. So I've done the dark wood here and here. I experimented with colors. I was a little bit unhappy with the initial colors that I laid down. And so what I finally settled down on is I went back to the reference photo, and it just appears that it's dark around the window, and then dark around the window and dark around the top. And right up here above the 45s, there's another little bit of plastic. So I've gone ahead and added that color in there. And then it was a little bit of a lighter brown, but not as light as the bottom. So I actually mixed both of these colors. And so I mixed them specifically for this building. So the other buildings will be probably slight variations or a little bit different entirely. I'm okay with that. I don't want to have all the buildings the same anyway. I want to make them unique. So that's what I came up with there. This actually has, those are shiny because they're actually painted out brass. So there's just the airbrushed brown, and then when I get the brass laid on, you can really see that it starts to profile the building really nicely and gives it kind of a cool wraparound effect. The door itself, you can see in here, the expanse of wood painted black, but I did lay in the brown color here, and then all the struts, they're all just a gray. Actually, a Vallejo gray is the color, and I wanted them to be kind of metal in nature but not shiny. So that's laid there. We're going to go with a metallic strip along the bottom that will run the entire length of the bottom of this, and then the gray color will be pulled into the actual platform, which you guys have seen as well. So not going to work on that this evening, but we are going to progress with the building further. Probably work a little bit more on this on Sunday. So if you guys are back for the final show, you guys can come check that out and see where we're at there. We'll probably on Sunday be able to attach this to the actual platform and then sort of set that aside as a finished piece to be attached to the tree. So we'll set that aside there. Okay, so let's get working with the platforms, and it doesn't really matter which one we do. This one obviously has a cutout; it goes around a piece in the tree. This one is solid because it's actually going to attach from the bottom. Nonetheless, we're going to cover the entirety of this, and we're going to use the paper mache to close over this gap too. I don't really need to close it in with anything really structurally sound. A bit of plastic is fine. I may actually just glue a piece of wood just in here, just because it gets a little bit flat in the bottom, in the middle here. This one obviously has a little bit more structural integrity as it runs around there. So let me just plug my glue gun in just while we're waiting for that to heat up, and we'll fix that piece, or add, I guess it's not broken, and then I'll show you the mixture. Okay, just had to go grab a glue stick from the other side of the studio. We'll probably just use a piece of this wood that's already cut here. We were cutting for something else. And just look and make sure we got a knife, which we do. Go. So just cut a piece to go in there. Maybe I'll cut two just because I have a little bit more strength that way. Just going to very loosely mark this. If you're checking in live on Facebook, feel free to say hello. If you're in Facebook, or YouTube I should say for the first one, if you're in Facebook, feel free to leave a comment to tell me who you were and that you were watching. That's always fantastic to know where people are watching from and who's watching. All right, so just cutting these pieces here, nothing fancy. Just a little bit of balsa, and we'll stick that on there. So while we're waiting for the glue gun to heat up, which is probably fairly close, let's go ahead and make our glue mixture. So what I have in here is just a little bit of water, and then here I have an empty container. The reason I don't put the water in first is because I like to add the water to the glue as opposed to the other way around. So I'm using some Weld Bond, my trusty Weld Bond here, and I'm just going to glob in a bunch of that. Okay, so glue's in the bottom. It's really, really thick. If you're not familiar with Weld Bond, it's a super viscous glue. So yes, Joseph Marks is in here. Hello. That's right. He's missed a couple sessions, or perhaps he caught them, but just wasn't in live, so fair enough. So now I'm just going to go ahead and start adding in some water. Usually it's about like a 1/3 mixture, so a third glue, or sorry, a third water, 2/3 glue. Just use a paintbrush or a stick, whatever you have available to mix it up. As long as you wipe it off, it's not going to ruin it. And of course, if you have something old, popsicle stick or something like that, you can just dispose of. That's always fine too. That's probably still a touch on the thick side. Just add your water slowly. You don't want to add too much because then you're going to have to add more glue, and of course your glue is more expensive than your water, and you don't need to have a ton of glue if you don't need it. We do have quite a bit of stuff to cover tonight, so this likely won't do the trick for the whole batch, but we'll go with that and see how far it takes us. Now this is rather thick, but I'm actually 100% okay with that. I'd rather it be a touch thick than, maybe it's a bit too thick. I'd rather it be a little bit too thick, because if it is really watery, what ends up happening is, especially where you have to go over these thresholds, they don't want to stick and adhere, and it ends up vaulting, and I really want them to be tighter fixes. Fair enough. Mark coming in from Quebec. Mark, hopefully you're staying safe in Quebec. I watch COVID news like it's going out of style, and I know your end of the country is not doing well. So hopefully everyone you know and your family is safe at this time. And I kind of feel somewhat responsible for your safety since you are usually hanging out here watching in the studio. So as long as you're not walking around outside, I'm assuming you're in your home somewhere. So you're welcome for that. Okay, good to see you. Wow, we have more people in YouTube tonight. I think people are kind of figuring out the transition is working, and we're moving over to YouTube. I'm glad people are able to log in. If you're logged in and you took the time to get here, let me know. Chat, ask questions, anything you want to see or know, something from the past. I don't mind getting out things. I'm just going to pop these two pieces in really quickly. Try not to hurt myself too badly here. Grab this, fire that in. Again, just to give it a little bit of added strength in there. Nothing. Like I said, it's just going to keep me from being able to pinch down that section. We'll do one more over here just to take care of that. I might just do myself a favor and just put the glue in here for the bottom section and do the top like this. I don't want to put a lot of glue, and I want to make sure that I move it around a little bit because this glue, especially on this thinner plastic card, it will create warping and welt it pretty badly. The thicker stuff is not a problem, but the thinner stuff will get a little bit of warp. So I think we're okay though. So there we go. We've got a little bit of structural integrity, and now we can kind of progress with the next steps. So that was not interesting use of a glue gun, short use anyway. So I'm not really sure if you guys will pick that up, but kind of see how, whoops, not what I wanted to do. Just wanted to show you how viscous that was. That was pretty fantastic. Won't be the first and only mess I make tonight, so I'm not 100% worried about that. That's why I have a mat laid down here. There we go. I think we got most of it picked up. We'll grab a bit more paper towel here just to there we go, clean that spot up. All right, so what we're gonna do is we need to cut some more paper. And for this, we're using our butcher paper here, or you can get it at postal outlets. Basically craft paper. It goes by a lot of different names. I'm just going to make a somewhat straight edge. There we go. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start tearing it into strips, but we want to have an uneven edge. We don't want to have a really clean edge. So first thing I'm going to do is just tear along here. And just get rid of the manufactured edge without necessarily wasting a lot. All right, so garbage can behind me, there we go. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna come in, and about 1 inch wide is probably fine for these. We're going to tear a bunch because we need a bunch, so. There we go. Oops. There, and then that one, I gotta tear the edge on this as well. There we go. Okay, so now that we have our ringlets of paper, we're going to just stack up 6 or 7 of them here. And we're gonna be tearing the paper into squares. So we get 6 or 7 of those. And then what we want to do here is we want to tear them into, you know, roughly like an inch, inch and a half or so. And we're not really worried about making them too uniform. In fact, we don't want them really uniform at all. The baby cry soundtrack tonight, which is just how it is sometimes here. Alright, so there we go. We're just tearing all these up. There. There we go. Next. Once we get these prepped, there should be enough coverage for quite a bit. Cheaper material, doesn't really cost a lot to do this. Looks really good when we're finished. Okay, so now all we're gonna do is just farm this entire stack of stuff right into our mix. And it's only going to absorb so much. It can only, the paper can only get so saturated, so you don't have to worry about it like absorbing the entire contents of your mixture. You probably still have some left in the end, and you got a ton of working time because it doesn't. As long as you keep it saturated in there, it's not going to dry out right away. You got quite a bit of working time with this. So I just start mixing it all up in here, and you can really tell after you get it in there if it's too thick or not. If your paper is like mostly full of glue and doesn't look like it's going to separate or move, then you want to add a bit more water. And I usually add a bit more water after I get everything at least covered in glue. The glue goes on first, it laminates everything together, then you put a bit more water in, and then your water helps to create a little bit of separation. So now I can successfully show you what that looks like. Really got. I want to keep mixing it because, as I said, the paper will laminate together, and you want to make sure that you get glue on all sides. So there we go. Just gonna throw a bit of water in there. Okay, so I think we have successfully mixed up our paper. So what I'm going to do next just to avoid making a super big mess on this mat, I'm just going to grab a piece of foam. I don't care about her crying, if you want to put her down, Mom. All right, so we'll grab this, and we'll start just grabbing out masses of paper. Now we have these like kind of paper wads here. We don't need that much, so we'll separate out a little bit, set them here kind of on our foam, and before we put them on, we want to stretch them out. We want to make sure that we're putting this stuff on flat. Now, this is the center right here. It's a little hard for you to tell, but this is the center. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of just radiate out these pieces from the center. I don't want necessarily a concentric pattern going out in the final look, but I use that to make sure that I have uniform coverage, and then I just randomly place some on the second and third layers. And I don't lay 3 layers of this. What I mean by is I create a little bit of an overlap between each, and then I do subsequently add ones that will maybe be the second or third layer. So I'll just use this to lay a pattern out, then I'll randomize, and then over the top we're actually going to do some thin plastic card overlay on this landing platform, and so that will help break up the piece as well. And then what we'll also do with the painting is we'll do an ink layer, and then we're going to pick out 2 or 3 other colors of brown to kind of give it that patchwork look. When we're all said and done, it really won't look like a pattern at all. It'll look pattern-like, but you certainly won't pick out this concentric circle that we're going to lay here in the initial stages. So you can see here I'm just teasing apart the paper as much as I can. I don't want it to be bunched in any way. And it's nice and thick, and then this really adds a lot of strength. Not that you need a lot of strength, but it really does add a lot of strength to an otherwise quite flimsy piece of plastic. And you notice sometimes you'll delaminate some pieces and they won't have any glue on them. That's why you have lots of glue there. You just can rub your fingers on it and add glue in between the layers really quick and easy, and it lays down nice and flat. And again, this glue that's on here will dry clear. It'll take the ink will still absorb, and it'll be really neat when we're all finished. All right. It is, of course, a messy process. We will have some pieces that need to have a little bit more glue applied. Like I said, when you throw it in there, you mix it around as much as you can, but you have to kind of delaminate the pieces after they get their initial lamination. And what we're going to do here for this gap is I'm going to just put pieces to the gap right now, and then what I'll do is I'll take some strips and actually lay them over this opening, and then use another layer on top to sort of solidify that top and bottom. Peel this apart. Just getting a little bit of glue on some of these ones that missed. Put a bit more water just to create a bit more soup in the bottom. There we go. So got some really super juicy ones here. And again, we'll just lay them down in a random-like pattern. That's a dog, if you were curious what that sound is. Stretch that out. If you guys got any questions, just let me know. I want to try to take any folds out, so I don't really want any folds in the hides. And I'll lay some of these kind of over the edge a little bit, just to kind of create some just to create some lines that don't all seemingly have a seam right on the edge of the overhang there. So I can do that in some places. Some places I want to, you know, use a little bit of a randomization by going over the edge. I'm going to show you what we're going to do to the actual edge of this as well. We're going to account for this right here, and we're actually going to stretch a piece. Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead. We're just going to stretch. I got a protective dog here beside me. Go, Bella. Go with Mom.
Come on. Let's go get a treat.
Oh, go get a treat.
Come on.
There you go. The old treat works. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut some longer ones. And again, this first layer is just to get some coverage. The next longer ones will be used to close off the gap, as I said, but also go over this edge. We want to redefine this profile. I don't want to have it try to follow this pattern. It's not really what we're looking for. It's very similar to what we did with this here as well. So we want to have it go over the lip, and then the same thing with the bottom. I redefined using the plastic card strips. So we're going to do that in the upcoming stages here. Just getting all this laid out here. I want to have the overlap of the pieces, but I don't want to have, there goes another dog. I don't want to have too much overlap where I'm really building up artificial thickness. I don't need the hides to be thick, because obviously the plastic is definitely harder than the paper ever will be. However, I do want to have at least some coverage here. If they tear at all, that's fine. It's just going to make it a little bit more natural of a piece anyway, so don't worry about that. Again, I'll get it as close to the edge. If it goes over, that's fine. We're going to redefine that profile anyway. So there we go. And you'll notice I constantly keep going back and smoothing out any of the edges. Again, I don't want the edges to lift, because what that does is when I go to ink it later, it starts to letting the ink sort of seep underneath. And that's something we want to look to avoid as well. Just gonna keep taking off the glue off my fingers here so it's a little bit easier for me to work. Nice and messy. And you'll see that starts to dry really quick. That's the first stuff we lay down, and you can see the glue. What it does is it creates a difference in the density of the paper. And so anywhere it was thicker, it'll be darker. Anywhere it was lighter or didn't have as much glue, it'll have more of a light pattern. And then when you go to put down your ink, it will absorb in different ways as well based on the density of the glue. So it does actually help with the final look. All right, I'm just gonna push some paper down in here. Just keep mixing that. Got a little bit of a soup now in the bottom, which is great. That's just going to keep everything nice and hydrated and allow me to have more working time. Okay, so I think I've explained that enough, so I'm just going to pick up the work pace here a little bit just so we can get to some other steps within this process. But if you guys have questions, it's a great time to pop them in chat, and I can answer a question as opposed to explain what I'm doing. And sometimes pieces will just come naturally sort of laminated, like these two here look good. They're already laminated together. Great, lay them down, gives me a bigger patch that I can cover. Fantastic. Go. So we're getting there. It's progressing. It's not too long of a process, just a little bit of a messy process. Got to do a few more small ones up front there. I'll make sure I get full coverage. And if you have like small areas and you need to tear, don't be afraid to do so. There's nothing wrong with tearing pieces. As I said, it just kind of adds to the look anyway. And you want to have, a few randomized pieces here and there. Doesn't hurt, even if they're kind of off size from what the bulk of them are. I just kind of used this size in my test, and it seemed to be good. By the time you overlap and change direction and add other pieces on, you end up having what looks like really small pieces there. Bella, shh. Bella, hey. Sorry, I'm sure that guy scares you guys watching too, so. Alright, there we go. Just lay those over the edge. Okay, and just another little piece. I mean, I got it, I might as well use it. There we go. Okay, so kind of what we're looking like right there. And again, you can see that there's definitely a geometry to it, which is perfectly fine. But we'll break that up with added random pieces over. Question from Jailbreak says, so just curious regarding the build, are you using anything in particular for reference? So yeah, there's a site called, geez, I want to say, you know what? It's going to bother me now. ArtStation, that's what it is. ArtStation. So ArtStation has, I just looked up Kashyyyk. It has a ton of Star Wars reference. I'm not 100% sure if the photos are from Battlefront or what they're from, but there's a couple just Kashyyyk beach images. And so what I've done is basically taken the overall theme, the overall look. I've tried to pick some elements that I thought are pretty iconic to, or at least redundant through a lot of the imagery. And then I've sort of used artistic license to sort of extrapolate the build, and whatever I can't see, I just sort of imagine like, oh, this might be something that they used in this particular location, or this looks like it's wood, but yeah, I'm just kind of going for the color look. I don't think there's a lot of this hide covering, but I actually think it looks a little bit more interesting than just wood everywhere. And so I'm trying to use the hide to create like kind of the base layer, but then I put a lot of the accoutrements and the adornments that the Kashyyyk world has to just kind of bring it kind of back in scope. So I just think this makes a really interesting covering. If you're just tuning in for the first time, because I'm not sure if I've seen you Jailbreak in here, let me just show you what a more finished example of this looks like. So this is a piece of the hide covering, and then this has been given its first layer of ink, and so you can kind of see that I've done a sort of stippling look to give it a bit of a unique pattern. This would be a more polished version of the hide covering, and then this has been given some weathering treatment and obviously some airbrushing, and you can sort of see the pattern and variation that comes out in that as well. So those are kind of examples of where I've used this look. Now, the top version of this is done with wood, and so that's kind of just a bottom treatment. This one here is done as a top treatment, so kind of in contrast under the overhead cam, you can kind of see they're a little bit red underneath there, but they're definitely more brown. The side cam will give you a little bit better with the light not being so harsh, but yeah, that's just an example of what we're doing. And then obviously we have, we bring that look through at the top of the hut here. We have a little bit more of that treatment, but then this one's given a wood treatment. So I'm just sort of tying in all those sort of natural elements and look color-wise, just to give an overall theme. So I'm definitely using some artistic license, but just because the reference photos don't specifically tell me what materials they used to make what. So I guess that's just my ability as the builder to use that artistic license, I guess, if you will. Good question though. Thanks for asking. Another comment popped up. Fantastic. Go get a little bit more of this on here. One thing I'm just paying attention to is I'm piling on the layers moving from the center out, as I said. So the center will look like it's kind of like the lowest layer. However, it has so much overlap that shouldn't be, that should be negligible at best. Want to make sure we can tuck some of these down. If not, I can always trim. Obviously, you can only work on so much of the piece at a time because you can't really flip it over and work on the backside because it just then the top will glue to something. So I want to make sure that I'm able to wrap those pieces over. I'll do that part before I do the bottom because otherwise these will be really stiff, and then the only way I'm going to be able to get them to lay down is if I actually cut them with a knife. So that's something I do need to pay attention to. In order to do that, I'll just set this up on something. I'll wrap that down under, and then we'll set that one aside to dry. So we'll do have to pay attention to that. We just got to make sure that the sides stay saturated, and we just keep sort of manipulating them in this downward fashion just so that they become a little bit easier to push over. As I said, we can just always cut them too, so this stuff gets to be very stiff and cuts exceptionally well. Go. What are we doing for time? Oh, not bad. Not bad. like to get this piece done, and then we'll get the sides done, and then we'll try to get onto the other flat as well, which would be very similar to this, but it's where I'm at in the build, so I try not to set these live builds up for too much. You know, there's a little bit of prep work, but basically you're seeing exactly the work that I'm doing. I'm not trying to. If you're looking for the more polished stage videos, not stage, but polished edited videos, that'll definitely be in the monthly Patreon ones, but not these. Those take a lot more prep work than this. This is just this work all has to happen. So you guys are just getting to enjoy it, or watching me suffer, one or the other. That's fun. There we go. Just pulling that back a little bit to get a coverage. There we go. Next up, that. It's therapeutic. Yeah, I guess in a way. Yeah, it's like kind of like laying a cast on somebody. I feel like this would be what it's like to cast a person. I've never actually put a cast on someone, but I can imagine it's maybe like this in a way. All right, there we go. Okay, well, we're going to have probably just enough to, well, we'll probably have a bit extra, but we'll have enough to cover this, which is good. And then we'll lay a few, can't lay too many random pieces on, because what we'll end up having to do is we're going to have to end up, when we wrap that, and I could have done that first in a way, but the reason I don't want to do it first is because then I end up having to lay too many layers on. But once we bring those pieces up, we're going to have a little bit of a layer here. So then what I'm going to end up doing is randomizing the pieces over to kind of blend that edge. However, the reason I can do it on this particular one is because I'm going to be laying a circle, a really thin plastic card circle over the top of this, and it's going to be cut to a specific pattern. And the line where those pieces come up, I'm going to kind of keep them a bit more uniform. Where they come up, I'll actually use the plastic to go over that, and I'll blend the seam with that. So I'll have a little bit of a cosmetic overlay, and that's kind of the reason I didn't do the other pieces first. I can do the same thing on the other one as well, so I'll probably just do it the same method, but just in case you're wondering why I might not have done that first. I could have. It's 6 of one, half dozen the other, really. But in doing that, that actually would have been only a little bit of work, and you wouldn't have been able to see much with that, because that would have to set up and dry. And this one here gives me a lot more coverage, and I can use the top and bottom layers to hold that other one in a bit better. Because if I put those straps on first, if you will, the straps. If they don't lay perfectly flat on the top and the bottom, then when I go to lay this layer on, it would actually be kind of like uneven and unlevel, and that's something that I'm going to look to avoid for sure. On the bottom, I don't so much mind. On the top, I do. All right, so we're kind of nearing the end here, or the last of the top pieces that need to go down. So it just looks a lot nicer than the green and white pie plate that we had. Kind of at the corner there. Okay, so that's what we have. Now we're going to set that aside for a second. I'm going to attempt to take some glue off my hands. Bear with me here, I'm just scrubbing my hands into the garbage can. Okay, so what we got to do next is tear some more paper. We have glue in the bottom, which is fine. And we're going to go back to our paper that we have here. We want to make these a little bit more strategic in size. So we're probably going to want to go, let's say probably about 4 inches or so. That's probably good. There. We're going to then what we're going to do is these ones, we don't so much care about the random nature. I do not want to have a clean edge though, so I will take that off. And I will take the other side off. There's something really super annoying about glue all over your hands. I was never one of those elementary school kids to put glue all over your hands and then peel it off like dead skin. Yeah, it's disgusting. So same deal. We're gonna just tear these into roughly 1-inch strips or so. Tear on the paper there. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to fire these ringlets without tearing them into the glue bath here. So we still got lots of glue on the bottom. Tame them down as best we can here. So just mixing them in just like we did before. These should be a little bit easier to work with in the sense that I won't have to peel so much apart because they're a little bit longer. But we do want to make sure we get really good saturation like we did for the other pieces. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to get our phone back. We need to lay them over the top. Let's just grab one. Got to lay it over the top and then under the bottom. So we're going to come here. We're going to go, you know, about an inch or so in. Like I said, we're going to put it in so that we can kind of keep that pattern. We're going to pull this down and we're going to wrap it along the bottom. Now, this may take a little bit of work, but let me just show you what we're trying to achieve here. What we're trying to achieve, I got to kind of lift this out of the way, but if you can see the gap that's right there, if you can see that line, that profile line, that's the line that we're trying to create right there. So we want to use this to these pieces to go over that. I'm going to use this as my sort of guide here, or my balancer, and just keep pulling those pieces down and over. So about an inch or so, a little bit of an overlap. We don't need much because we're going to cover that again. Stretch it to the bottom. Now, the only tricky part is got to kind of keep the pieces taut because we want to maintain that profile. And we can do some trimming and cutting and all that stuff later once they've sort of dried up. And we can always just add patches here and there as need be. But as much as we can, we'd like to establish that profile right now with these pieces. And the reason it's a bit tricky is because you got to keep pulling the pieces taut. And you got to get that profile just right. And I may actually have to do this in 2 stages. I may actually have to skip every other one for now until I can get a little bit of a banding going here. And what I mean by that is precisely what I've done here. So you can see here I didn't try to layer the pieces right next to each other or over each other. I created a little bit of gap, and then when I lay those bands on, I'm going to have a little bit of a threshold. So probably be able to do the same thing with this. If I just keep a little bit of a gap between these, I can come back and either lay a piece sideways or lay a piece over the top once they've had a little bit of opportunity to dry up and solidify. So I think that's what I'll do for now. Lots of glue. Just gonna lay a couple of these pieces out. And my apologies for having to keep reaching in front of the camera here. I can kind of do it behind, I guess. Okay, rotate that around. Go here. I have a few of the smaller pieces that are still from the previous batch. I'll just stack them up there, keep them saturated. It's like doing arts and crafts. The big fan I am, minus the messy parts. But sometimes you gotta be messy. Feel free to ask questions too, guys. You're not interrupting me at all, even if it looks like I'm trying to concentrate. I'd much rather answer a question than explain redundantly what I'm doing. Although I can do that too if you're just joining and you're not sure what the heck's going on and what this mess and monstrosity is. I can tell you. Don't really know. Okay. Next one. These are all short ones from before. And again, you can see how much glue I've put into these pieces because really I can't afford to have them lifting, coming up from the bottom, or anything like that. I really need to make sure that they are maintaining the profile. I'm just manipulating some of these shorter ones from before, kind of taming them down. If I can get them going in the right direction, that's decent. Just going to turn this over for a second, make sure I have as much tension in these pieces as possible. You guys can see that I'm just teasing and tension and putting some tension in the straps, if you will. Just kind of keeping it as taut as I can. Okay. Go. Big mess, big mess. All right, a few more. That's a short one. This looks like a long one. Okay, we got to the end basically. All right, so this is going to be a bit of a tricky part here because it's right on the end and there's not really a place to attach anything to. So I'm just going to wrap that right on the line. Seems to work okay. And then I'll go and start laying some this way here. I'm not really in focus there, but let me just bring this back out a little bit. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult not to work in front of the camera, so I'll do my best. So this is where I was talking about kind of being a little bit of a weird section. So if you can see here, we have the profile this way, and then we have the profile this way, but we don't really have a way of kind of closing in this end gap here. So what I'll likely do is I can take some of these shorter pieces and kind of use them as almost like mini straps, and I can just sort of lay those over. However, what I'm probably going to need to do first is I'm going to have to let this piece dry up, and then I can lay a strap over top of that because I don't really have anything to solidify this right now. So I'll come back to that. That's not a worry. I had to build a couple of the other pieces that I did in like 2 sessions, like a couple sessions. I'd had to let one piece dry, and then I'd have to come back. This one again will be a 2-session build as well because I'm gonna have to come back and do the bottom once it's dry anyway. All right, so we're just gonna continue here, laying this over. Lots of room on this one. Straps are easy to wrap because I don't need to. Matter of fact, I can probably do these ones in half rather, just because they don't have to go over the threshold and they just got a smaller distance to travel. This is actually going to be facing into the tree, so the entirety of this really, truthfully, doesn't matter because it is going to be right in, as I said, against the tree. I want to keep just taking the tension, making sure I'm not having anything slump on me. Keep flattening the top as well as I go. Just not for the faint of heart, I guess, this particular step. It's okay, we only have to do 2 of these. We got to recover one of those sort of lollipop looking things, and then we got a couple of the roof structures, all kinds of stuff. We're carrying this look through, so hopefully you guys like it. Everyone's quiet in chat though tonight, so I don't know. It could be getting mixed reviews. Notice that I just try to wring out a little bit of the glue. That's mostly so that I can make sure that when I put the piece down, it doesn't float. It actually just grips where I need it to. And what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to tear this piece on both sides, because I'm going to go right in the corner and then fold it down. I just have to look and see where I need to tear the other section. Tear it there, and then what I'll do is I'll put it right in the middle. It'll fold along the cuts, flatten it down as best I can, because again, it's right in the crux. It's going to be behind the tree. No one will ever see it. It's a point of attachment. That's merely all it is. And there we go. So tons of glue floating on the top of this. Really lovely. It's going to be interesting to see how it takes all the ink later on. I am going to be back momentarily. I'm just going to go rinse my hands a little bit cleaner. Then we're going to come back and we're going to lay that second layer over. We are going to cut a couple more things before we do that though, just so that we don't run out. So give me about 1 minute. Good time to grab a beverage or something on your end. Okay, I'm back. Just gonna set everything aside. Still got some glue in there, which is fantastic. Probably enough that we can throw our next batch in. Just keep manipulating that. We're going to grab a drink while we can. All right. So the patchwork is probably not super evident with the glue mixture on there, but hopefully you guys can start to see how that, as I said, we used fairly uniform pieces, but I think you'd agree that that's anything but uniform at this point. So, which is decent. Turning that over, and got some good tension there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to come back and start folding in all those sort of intermittent pieces, or as many of them as we can, given that we got a few larger gaps, and I think we'll be able to get most of them here in the next layer. So set that down without getting too much glue on me. Okay, and grab our paper and just do a quick, probably don't need as many, but we'll tear one strip worth anyway. You can turn your mics down if this is loud for you. Go a little touch shorter. There we go. Fantastic. Tear the ends. Tear the end. Ruler, and away we go. Ringlets of paper into the witch's brew. Okay, oops, stay in there. first one's wet, and they start sucking down the other ones. Okay, we're good and messy. Looking forward to this. Okay. So, same process as before. I think we got a few more people joining us. Welcome, welcome. Identify yourselves. Where are you from? All right, we're going to go in between, and we're going to start pulling this down as best we can. And even if we get a little bit of vaulting, that's fine. We'll come over that in the end and try to use some patches and little pieces to cover over some of the gaps if we can, or should we need to. And I ran into this. Actually, I'm going to use an old brush here. An old brush can help me. So where I ran into this before, let me grab my was with this one right here, and you can see that I had to kind of go over that same threshold. Now I did this one a little bit in a different fashion. I brought it up two, and then I laid the piece on first. However, I didn't like the finished look, so that's why I went with this piece where I went first a piece, then a piece, not a piece in the bottom, but a piece over the top, and I think that it'll be an easier way to fix this look in the end. So it's still fine. You can't see any of the seams, but I just think that this look here may be a little bit more polished in the final result than the first one that I did. Either way, I know how to fix both styles, so and when I say fix, I use fix a lot to just mean like cosmetically. I don't mean anything's like structurally broken or requires it. It's just an aesthetics thing. It's a matter of getting those pieces to be stuck together. I'm going to try to work like this. As long as the bottom doesn't glue to the foam, I'll be all right. Except I wish I had a third hand here, because now I can't get the paper sorted out. I think I might have to set this down each time. And the paper gets sticky. You can see some of the stuff that's already starting to dry. It sort of gets it gets really tacky, and so my hand actually starts to stick to it, which is not super ideal. That's why I kind of have to work typically in multiple steps, but we're going to do this part together, and hopefully it will work out okay. Yeah, I can tell some of these. So this is the prime example right here where there's absolutely nothing I can do about this at this point. There's just no structural integrity here, so you're going to see that there's a gap right there. That's going to have to be fixed, and I mean, what I'm really going to be looking to do is go like this, lay another piece over, and then it's gone. So that's really all I'm doing at this point is just kind of working my way along and cosmetically correcting anything that I can't get the strip to do on its own. So you've seen how easy that was to kind of cover over. So I think the big thing with this is you got to really be patient and be willing to take things off, go back a couple pieces, cut, manipulate, change your kind of approach, because this material is not really wanting to do what I want it to do right now. Like it needs to stick to something. I'm trying to get it to stick to nothing, and so I'm just trying to use the tension to make that work. And so I have to be willing to redefine my approach here if it doesn't want to cooperate. So far we've been able to make it happen. Here's another example where we're gonna have to grab one of these small patches, which we don't mind. That's why we got them. Come in, lay a little bit of a patchwork over. This one's a bit weird. So it's a fairly large cavity. Okay, there we go. So let me just show you kind of what we got going on right now. There's our bottom. There you can kind of see the profile. Now it's not going to be perfect. It's made to be hide, so it's okay to have some undulations and some weird sort of billowing or bulking, because it's not pulled over a manufactured edge. It's literally supposed to be hide pulled over to kind of cover this landing platform. And so I'm perfectly fine if we got some variation in that. We're going to want to make sure that it's nice and strong because we don't want to poke our fingers through it or anything, but where this is going to be placed, how this is going to interact, particularly for gameplay, is going to be negligible at best. So this probably never gets touched in the course of a game. This underside in particular, I mean. And so I don't really have to be concerned about that, even though I am still trying to make it as structurally sound as possible. I think those are all short ones. Short one. There's a nice long piece there. Manipulate that under. There we go. Another one. Try not to pull it when I'm putting this on too. Try not to pull it all in one direction. I'm still trying to keep it sort of straight on if I can, because I do want it to have some resemblance of, I actually don't want it to have a resemblance of a specific type of pattern. Again, trying to walk out or work out those concentric lines. Again, I can patchwork it on the bottom if I feel it's too uniform. We're gonna try baby in bed again, maybe. Usually she's already sleeping by the time I live stream on Fridays, but today it's just a little bit later, so my apologies. If you're attempting to escape your own crying baby noises, last thing you want to hear is my crying baby. go. Okay, I'll let you guys see how I'm progressing here. You guys can I always have trouble with this camera. Here we go. So you can see that we basically have it covered over to about where you start to see green. And then that's kind of what the top's looking like there. And so we're going to have a little bit of patterning here along the edge, right? Because that's kind of where each piece is lining up. So what we'll do when we come in with the smaller patches and kind of break up this line right here is we'll put a few patches just sporadically along the edges just to kind of break up that tedious nature again. Okay, so we're about halfway there on this piece. I think we'll probably just finish up this piece for tonight anyway by the rate we're going here. Take a little bit of glue off my hands again. A little bit off. Try my beverage here. So hopefully I don't glue my lid on here. Okay. Let's see how many more pieces we got left. Hopefully I have enough cut. If not, I'll have to tear a few more, I guess. Let's grab these guys out. Alright, that guy went down nicely. Covered a big patch. Another one down. Welcome if you're just joining us or wherever you're joining me from, Facebook or YouTube or whatever other place you found me on. Guess that one's really saturated, so I'll try our best to make it work here. Again, just smoothing that in between. It's looking kind of cool, actually. It's got a unique pattern. All right, another one here. Rotating around, I guess, would be the best. Try not to let it glue to my little holder here. Note I do need a little patch piece here because I got a list a little bit. That was a little bit too wide of a gap for that particular piece. Problem. Let's grab this little patch, throw it on there. Good as new. You can almost imagine them using hides as, patching. It's great to use hide material because if you do get a tear or a patch or a tear or a rip or a break or you need a repair, obviously this is industrial hide, but you can kind of get the idea that it would definitely go down in a quilt-like fashion, in a patchwork, so to speak. Grab this little piece here. Again, just using this to artificially create a vault line. Oh, there we go. Okay. I only have a few more pieces left here, so I may have to mix up a couple more. Need probably about 6 or 7, but I don't know if I have 6 or 7 in this pile. Okay. Can skip one spot because this is a nice wide one. And get that laid down there. Actually, I think that might be okay, other than the backside there, which I don't have any real need to use specific pieces there. I can probably get away with using a few smaller ones. Okay. Here, I'm going to come in. I got to do a few patches, but I need to look this way to do it. So again, I'm just finding spots where there's a little bit of contact issue. Just two pieces are either not wanting to stick together or the vault lines don't line up. Just going to tear this piece, stick that on there, and just recreates that line I'm trying to go for. So actually, as long as I have one more long piece in here, I think I'll be all right. Finish this. I do. Just gotta get it flattened out with one hand here. There. Grab a small piece for a patch. Oh, this is tedious with one hand, that's for sure. That one I'm actually going to need to have two patches because it's so awkward. See if I can find a piece that's really small. Come on, you can do it. See a difficult task? This right here. Good God. There we go. Small patch applied. Mission accomplished. All right, there we go. We are trying to take my thumbprints off the top. That's not a thing you want to have showing up in your pattern. So that is now officially covered on the bottom. Now we will obviously layer over this. So what we'll do is we'll use our layer to go over this, recreate the patchwork on the bottom. That's fine. On the top side, let me set this down for a second. Smooth out this. On the top side, what we need to do is, other than patch over this little bit of an inside piece, but again, this is probably going to be something that I need to take care of in the next stages, like in the after this is dried, because I won't be able to finish the look here. So what we'll do is we'll finish up this with the second layer. We'll let all this dry, and what I have to do, just occasionally come back and just monitor it a little bit. Just like there might be an edge or something that'll flip up or fold up. I want to come in and just make sure that I'm sort of taking care of those edges and making sure everything stays nice and flat and even. What I'll end up doing here is probably just grabbing the Solo cup, just because it has a little bit of a smaller footprint. Keeping that pressed down, set that in there, and then we're just going to let that go ahead and dry. So I think I'll probably end for this evening. I know I'm only at an hour and a half. I will have another session on Sunday. I have to do this again, and I don't think you guys want to watch me do it all. It's going to be a redundant process, so there's really not much point in me filming that. I am already disastrous, and so I do want to stay at that process. So we'll end off there this evening. Let me just brush my hands off, and let me go over to the So there we go. So I'm going to jump back over to this one here just to let you guys go from here. We'll turn the TV off so it's a little less bright. And so thanks for watching, folks here in the studio. Have messy hands, so I'm going to try not to touch the computer too much. I'll finish up those other pieces, and then on Sunday I'll probably stream for a little bit longer, maybe even twice on Sunday, just depends. I might connect with Aaron in the morning and do a morning or mid-morning session with him, and then do a regular evening session. So I'll have all those done. I will bring you back and we'll start working on another structure before the project goes back to the dark side of Patreon. But I will bring periodic updates for you guys on that, just in case you are interested and are not currently a patron. Certainly, if you want to do that, go ahead and check me out on Patreon. It's just the Terrain Studio over there. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on a couple social medias. You can check me out on Legion Academy as well. Do a podcast on Tuesdays for that. It's a video cast. So if you guys want to come hang out, you can do that as well. So for the rest of the builds that are coming on the live, I'll still do some live streams. There'll just be some different projects, so still stay tuned for those, probably mostly on Fridays and maybe on Wednesdays. And so there'll be different projects, but nonetheless, you can come hang out and do exactly what you're doing right now. So I do appreciate that, guys, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching. Cheers.